one of Bruce Lee's great movies.
Return of the Dragon.
Return of the Dragon.
Bruce Lee was the kind of man who could silence a room without saying a word. But despite his reputation, he got kicked out of Hollywood. His speed was terrifyingly fast, his confidence magnetic, and his skill unmatched. Only one person ever came close. That was Chuck Norris. He was Bruce Lee's co-star and longtime friend. Recently, decades after Bruce Lee passed away, Chuck Norris has finally spoken up about the real reason why he got kicked out. It is not something anyone could have imagined. What did Chuck Norris have to say? Join us as we reveal the details. What Chuck Norris has to say. To the public, Bruce Lee was a martial arts legend.
Lee, a highly proficient martial artist and instructor from Hong Kong.
At the prime of his career, he had fans all across the world, more than any other artist of his caliber. To many of his fans, Bruce Lee was unstoppable. His fame wasn't just earned, it was fought for. But suddenly something strange was happening behind the scenes. Actors were refusing to work with him. At first, it was just one actor, and people thought it was probably because of a personal issue he had with Bruce Lee. But then, there were more and more of them. People began wondering if it was as a result of jealousy or fear, or could there be something deeper that no one wanted to admit out loud? Before long, this issue got so bad that Bruce Lee was eventually kicked out of Hollywood. Now, decades after all that had happened, Bruce Lee's old friend has finally revealed the real reason he got dismissed from Hollywood. What he said shocked everyone. Chuck Norris started his story with what motivated him to speak up now, decades after Bruce Lee's career and life was over. Ever since he left the Hollywood space, one question lingered in the shadows of Bruce Lee's legacy. Many people wondered why many Hollywood actors avoid sharing the screen with him. One can hardly say it was because he didn't offer the chance. Bruce Lee was known for bringing people into his projects. True, many times he would invite co-stars with whom he had a personal connection, but there were some times he would even reach out to people he hadn't worked with in the past. While some took that leap and reciprocated Bruce Lee's offer, many others didn't. And the silence around that decision grew louder over the years. Soon, rumors circulated. Some whispered that it was because Bruce Lee was arrogant and that he hogged the spotlight. Others suggested he was too intense, too dominant. There were even claims that directors found him difficult to direct and that his perfectionism left little room for creative collaboration. But all of that was speculation, until now. At 85 years old, Chuck Norris finally broke his silence after decades of listening to the lies about his old friend. His revelation changes everything we know of the legendary actor, Bruce Lee. Chuck Norris spoke of how they refused Bruce Lee because they couldn't keep up with him. By they, he meant the directors of Hollywood. Contrary to the narrative the directors were trying to put forward, Bruce Lee didn't intimidate others by force. He simply went about being good at his craft, and that revealed them. His presence alone exposed a brutal truth. Not everyone had the discipline, precision, or presence to match him. As an actor, working beside Bruce Lee meant you weren't just acting, and most couldn't stand that kind of scrutiny. Chuck Norris described Bruce Lee with a metaphor that said it all. He compared working next to him like standing beside a flame. Not a flame that scorches you out of spite, but one that forces you to see how cold you truly are in comparison. For Chuck Norris, it wasn't fear that made others turn away from working with Bruce. It was realization, a painful awareness that they weren't forged in the same fire, that Bruce burned with something most people only pretended to have. When Bruce Lee picked up a role, he wasn't just acting. He wasn't just playing the role of a fighter on screen. He was the fight. Every movement, every punch, every stare was backed by years of practice, discipline, and deep-rooted philosophy. For Bruce, martial arts was not a costume to put on. It was life. Every motion he made was meaningful. Chuck Norris knew this. And even though they were rivals on screen, off-screen there was deep respect, even admiration. Not many people could stand this. As a result, they kept their distance. They also confirmed what Bruce Lee stood for, which was authenticity. In a world full of performers, he was the real thing. That is why his legacy endures. The moment Chuck Norris spoke up about why Bruce Lee was cast out of Hollywood, something surprising began to happen. More people who knew the truth began to speak up as well. One of them caught everyone by surprise. This was Joe Louis, who was one of the greatest karate champions America has ever had. What made Joe Louis's opinion of Bruce Lee stand out was he wasn't even an actor, he was a real fighter. In Hollywood, Bruce Lee was often dismissed as a flashy performer. They saw him as a martial arts showman who turned combat into choreography. But while these movie critics questioned the substance behind the spectacle, real fighters like Joe Louis saw something entirely different. They didn't just see Bruce Lee as a movie celebrity, they saw him as a master. Joe Louis didn't just train with Bruce Lee, he learned from him. And so did Mike Stone, another elite-level martial artist whose victories in the ring were only matched by his deep respect for Bruce Lee's mind. For them, Bruce Lee was more than a peer, he was a visionary. He taught them how to master fight rhythm, not just how to react. His methods included giving his students a full training on how to strike at the right time, how to move deceptively until you have your opponent in the corner you want them. In the karate world, having big muscles often got more attention than mastery. But Bruce Lee's approach was revolutionary. He stripped away the rigid traditions of classical martial arts and replaced them with something fluid, something alive. He made fighters see that winning wasn't just about hitting harder, it was about striking at the right moment, reading your opponent's energy, knowing when the body betrays the mind, like the twitch of a shoulder or the breath taken just before a punch is thrown. Bruce understood those tiny details. He called them tells, and he read them like books. That's why many traditional fighters struggled to understand him. He wasn't just fighting with his body, he was fighting with his mind. Every move was an expression of self. For Bruce, combat wasn't about domination. It was about showing the truth through movement. There was something else about Bruce Lee that was even more sensational. He didn't care for trophies or titles. He wasn't driven by the need to conquer others. What mattered to him was presence. This was one of the things that eventually drew him to Chuck Norris. Before their screen rivalry, that is before they shot the movie, The Way of the Dragon together, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris were simply two martial artists drawn to each other by mutual respect. They met through the fighting circuit, both making waves in different ways. Chuck Norris with his dominating wins, Bruce Lee with his revolutionary philosophy. Chuck Norris brought something new to Bruce Lee's world, the high kick. At the time, it wasn't something Bruce Lee focused on. But when he saw Chuck Norris's technique, he didn't resist or criticize. He absorbed it, practiced it, and then made it his own. This was how their friendship had started. They would have hours of drills, sweat, sparring, and deep conversations about movement, meaning, and martial arts. Their training sessions weren't just physical, they were transformative. It was never about ego. It was about evolution. Chuck Norris once spoke about training with Bruce Lee. He described it as being different from other training sessions he has had. With Bruce Lee, you don't just learn what to do. You would also learn why you are doing it. Their bond was forged not on the movie set, but in long sessions of repetition, in shared bruises and breakthroughs. There was one time that bond was tested in a way neither of them could have anticipated. What happened as a result shocked everyone. This was when Bruce Lee decided to make a movie. It was to be his passion project. He called it The Way of the Dragon. He didn't plan for it to be a global phenomenon. It started out as a modest project Bruce Lee had written, directed, and choreographed by himself. It was a martial arts movie for those who understood martial arts. There were really no grand ambitions or studio-driven spectacle that motivated him to make this movie. It was just Bruce Lee's vision. But what emerged was more than a movie. It was a moment in cinematic history. The film broke barriers and exceeded everyone's expectations. It gave the world something it hadn't seen before, a hero who didn't just fight, but fought with purpose. It was a film where the philosophy behind the punches mattered as much as the punches themselves. And at the heart of this masterpiece was a battle that changed everything. The Colosseum in Rome. The world watched on as two of the greatest martial artists, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, fought. This wasn't just a fight scene, it was philosophy in motion. There was Bruce Lee with his signature fluid moves, just relaxed, reactive, and constantly evolving. He bounced like water, shifted like air. On the other side was Chuck Norris. He was disciplined and more mechanical with his strikes. He fought like a man who trained every day for one moment and was living it now. Together, they created a duel that transcended martial arts. Chuck Norris didn't have to do that film. By that time, he was already a world champion, a rising star in his own right. And Hollywood had already begun whispering warnings about Bruce Lee, that he was intense, unpredictable, maybe even too dominant to share the screen. But Chuck didn't listen to the rumors. He knew genius when he saw it, and he had no interest in avoiding it. He stepped into Bruce Lee's world with no ego or insecurity, just a shared love for the craft and a deep respect for the man behind it. Bruce Lee had that effect on martial masters like him. All his life, right from his birth, had been about the love of the martial arts. Some details of his early life had stunned many. The early life of Bruce Lee. In the late hours of November 27, 1940, under the flickering lights of San Francisco's Chinatown Hospital, a child was born during the Hour of the Dragon, in the Year of the Dragon. His father, Li Hoi Chuen, was a revered Cantonese opera performer and had been touring the United States with a theatrical troupe. His mother, Grace Ho, came from a wealthy, influential Eurasian family. They named their son Li Junfan, but to the world, he would become known simply as Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's entrance into the world was, in many ways, symbolic. He was a Chinese boy, born on American soil, destined to bridge East and West in ways no one had done before. Shortly after his birth, the Lee family returned to Hong Kong, unaware that war would soon consume their homeland. The Japanese occupation during the Second World War brought hardship and chaos. Bruce Lee's early childhood was marked by bomb raids, food shortages, and instability. But amid the struggle, something else bloomed. That was performance. This was something Bruce Lee excelled in. Thanks to his father's fame in the film industry, Bruce Lee began acting at just 3 months old. By the time he was 18, he had appeared in over 20 Hong Kong films, usually portraying troubled youth, street-smart orphans, and cocky teenagers. Yet these characters weren't too far removed from reality. But there was more to come. As Bruce Lee grew, so did his energy and his temper. He was smart but restless, quick to brawl and prone to mischief. Hong Kong's bustling streets soon became his battlegrounds. He earned a reputation as a fighter, one who didn't back down, even when the odds were stacked against him. By age 13, Bruce Lee's parents feared his temper might destroy his future, so they enrolled him in martial arts training under the famed Wing Chun master, Yip Man. It was here that Bruce began to transform. Yip Man's teachings emphasized timing, technique, and inner discipline. This fascinated Bruce Lee. He became obsessed with perfecting his movements. He practiced relentlessly, often using a wooden dummy late into the night, his fists and forearms bloodied but determined. Wing Chun was his introduction, but it wouldn't be his final destination. Around this time, Bruce also dabbled in fencing, boxing, and even cha-cha dancing. He was killing it. He won the Hong Kong Cha-Cha Championship in 1958. Things were going great, until trouble found Bruce Lee again. In 1959, Bruce Lee was once again caught up in a particularly bloody street fight. It was so bad that it left the other boy hospitalized. His parents feared for his safety. They made a difficult decision that Bruce would return to America alone. At 18, Bruce Lee arrived in Seattle with just $100 in his pocket and a steamer trunk filled with dreams. He stayed with family friends, worked odd jobs, and enrolled at Edison Technical School to finish high school. During the day, he studied. At night, he worked as a busboy in a restaurant. It was a humbling start, but Bruce Lee was focused. He later enrolled at the University of Washington, where he majored in philosophy. But it was in the school's gymnasiums and parks that Bruce Lee began to craft his legacy. He started teaching martial arts to anyone willing to learn, white, black, Asian, male, or female. This was at a time when Chinese martial arts were shrouded in secrecy. Bruce Lee's open-door approach caused friction with traditionalists, but he didn't care. He opened his first martial arts school, the Junfen Gung Fu Institute, in Seattle, then another in Oakland. His style was evolving, moving away from the rigidity of traditional forms. He called his new approach Jeet Kune Do, which means the way of the intercepting fist. Bruce Lee's charisma was undeniable. At a demonstration in Long Beach, California in 1964, he was spotted by Hollywood producers. One of them, William Dozier, cast Bruce Lee as Kato in the television series The Green Hornet. The show only lasted one season, but Bruce Lee's performance electrified viewers. He brought martial arts into American living rooms, becoming the first Asian actor to have a major role on primetime television. Still, he was cast as the sidekick, the helper, not the hero, and that stung. Bruce Lee began pitching his own ideas to Hollywood executives. He wrote treatments for films with Chinese protagonists, layered with philosophy, identity, and East-West themes. But the studios rejected them all. The reason? He was too Asian to be a lead. Racism blocked his path. Studios wanted his skills, but not his face, at least not as a leading man. Soon the offers dried up. By the early 1970s, Bruce Lee was barely making ends meet. He returned to Hong Kong, hoping to find better opportunities there. But he couldn't have imagined how it would all turn out. When Bruce Lee arrived in Hong Kong in 1971, he was shocked to learn he was already a star. The Green Hornet had aired there under the title The Kato Show, and his martial arts had captivated audiences. Golden Harvest, a new Hong Kong film studio, gave him creative freedom. Bruce Lee seized it. He wrote, directed, and starred in The Big Boss in 1971. The film was a phenomenon, smashing box office records. Fist of Fury followed, then The Way of the Dragon in 1972, which Bruce Lee directed himself. Unlike Hollywood, Hong Kong let Bruce be the hero. More than that, he was the myth, the symbol of Chinese strength and defiance. His fame skyrocketed. In 1972, Bruce began working on Game of Death, a philosophical martial arts film exploring combat as a metaphor for life's obstacles. But mid-production, Hollywood finally called. Warner Brothers wanted to partner with Bruce Lee on Enter the Dragon, the first-ever U.S.-Hong Kong co-production with an Asian lead. Bruce Lee halted Game of Death to focus on the new project. Enter the Dragon was different. It wasn't just action. It was culture, identity, commentary on colonialism, and Bruce Lee's unique brand of martial arts philosophy. It was filmed on a modest budget, and it was completed in early 1973. But sadly, Bruce Lee would never see its global success. In the months leading up to the film's release, Bruce's health took a mysterious turn. He began experiencing intense headaches, seizures, and weight loss. His once muscled frame had thinned dramatically. In May 1973, he collapsed in a Hong Kong studio after suffering a cerebral edema that is brain swelling. He recovered temporarily, but remained fatigued and complained of recurrent headaches. Then, on July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee visited the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei to discuss a film project. He complained of a headache and took a painkiller containing aspirin and a tranquilizer. He lay down to rest and never woke up. He was just 32. The world was stunned. There were various conspiracies that were circulating. Some said he was poisoned or murdered. Some even said he was cursed. But the official cause was cerebral edema, possibly triggered by a hypersensitivity to the medication. 2 weeks after his death, Enter the Dragon was released. It became a global hit, turning Bruce Lee into an icon. He had finally conquered Hollywood, but only after death. What do you think of Chuck Norris's opinion of Bruce Lee's experience in Hollywood? Do you think Bruce Lee was a great actor? We would love you to share your opinion in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.